Welcome to the June 16th meeting of the Granville Exempted Village School District Board of Education. Nice to see everybody this evening. Thanks for being here. We'll get through this quickly so you can get back to the World Cup. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Denise?
Here.
Mr. Miller? Here. Dr. Mantel?
Here. Commendations. Sorry.
I didn't know if you wanted to do any other welcoming.
No, I didn't.
Okay, good evening. Tonight, we are not honoring soccer. We are honoring the outstanding season achieved by both the indoor and outdoor track teams. Teams led by Coach Bob Holland and a myriad of other coaches that supported our runners this year. They excelled in the sport and earned competing spots at the state indoor tournament held during the winter months and the OHSAA state outdoor track that was held on June 6th and 7th. So, let me give you a few highlights from the indoor track season and then the outdoor track season. So the girls team placed 9th overall this season, and this is indoor. So if you think I get it wrong, remember I'm doing indoor first. The 4x800 relay team of Bruck, Lamb, Braden, Dickerman placed 15th. The 4x200 relay team of McCourt, Price, Harmon, and Brunn took 11th place. And the 4x400 relay team of Logan, Brock, Price, and DeGennaro took 3rd place and were named All-Ohio while also setting a new school record. Individually, Natalie Price took 11th place in the 400 dash and set a new school record. Caitlin Logan took 12th place in the 800 run. Michaela DeGennaro took 1st place in the 800 run to become state champion in the process of setting a new school record. Cassidy Carey finished 5th place for the 1600 run and was named All-Ohio. The boys team placed 8th overall this season. The 4x800 relay team of Fondries, Pappas, Lucan, and Rogerson took 16th place. The 4x400 relay team of Otterstedt, Lucan, Sproul, and Lenfest took 9th place. Individually, Casey Lenfest took 4th place in the 200 dash and was named All-Ohio. Tyler Otterstedt set a new school record while finishing 1st in the 800 run and claiming the state champion title. And Ryan Black placed 14th in the 800 run. Andy Walzak took 14th place in the triple jump. Highlights from the outdoor season. The girls team placed 25th overall in Division I and the boys team placed 9th. The girls team of Logan, Lamb, Carey, and DeGennaro took 11th place at the state in the 4x800 relay. The 4x400 relay team of Logan, DeGennaro, Price, and Lumling took 5th and were named All-Ohio while setting a new school record outdoor. Individually, Michaela placed 5th in the 1600 and was named All-Ohio. Caitlin Logan finished 14th place in the 800 run. Tyler Otterstedt finished 2nd place in the 800 run and was named All-Ohio. Casey Lenfest took 1st place in claiming the state championship title in the 200 dash. In addition, Tyler, Casey, Rachel were also selected for the Team Ohio Seniors All-Stars competing at the Midwest Meet of Champions this past weekend, which was held here in Granville. And I have a separate sheet that talks about those highlights. So, we're here for the long run here. Rachel ran the leadoff leg in the victorious 4x400 relay team for Ohio. Caitlin Logan placed 5th in the 800 meter run. Tyler Otterstedt placed 4th in the 800 meter run. And Casey Lenfest was selected as track star of the stars for his performances, running the 3rd leg of the 1st place 4x200 meter relay, taking 1st place in the 200 meter dash, and running the anchor leg in the 1st place 4x400 meter relay. So, please join me in congratulating all of these runners that are here tonight. I'm going to name all of them, but I think it's also important to recognize that all of these runners were coached by some excellent coaches. Coach Holland, Augusta, Brown, all of those coaches, really Rogerson, there's I think a lot of them. But they do a great job of really helping our students excel. So Taylor Bruck, Claire Lamb, Destiny Braden, Ellie Dickerman, Erica McCourt, Natalie Price, Ainsley Harmon, Allison Brunn, Caitlin Logan, Michaela DeJaneiro, Cassidy Carey, the boys, Stephen Fondries, Joe Pappas, Jonathan Lukens, Chase Rogerson, Tyler Otterstedt, Byron Spruill, Casey Lenfest, Ryan Black, Andy Walzak. That was just the indoor. Outdoor, again, you'll hear some names: Caitlin Logan, Claire Lamb, Cassidy Carey, Michaela DeJaneiro, Natalie Price, Rachel Blumling, Tyler Otterstedt, and Casey Lenfest. Please come up. Now, I expect you to be really fast getting to the pictures. And I don't know, is our picture person here? Well, Mom's got cameras. All right. Come on up. Cassidy, and they're all in here. Yep. I think you're up front. There you go. All right, now we have to turn around and take pictures for Facebook. So let's stand all together. Are we all good, Mom and Dad? All right, very good. Congratulations. Now, these guys are great athletes, but they're also great kids, and they are also very, very bright in the classroom. So it's nice to see the well-rounded nature of our students, seeing success in just about everything that they encounter. So congratulations. I know some of you came back. You're already graduated. You didn't have to come back here, but you're here, and I really appreciate that, and we're going to miss the seniors for sure. So thank you. Now, this is the end of commendations. You are more than willing to stay, and you can stay as long as you want, or you can leave right now, and we're not going to have our feelings hurt. So. Thank you. Yep. Which brings us to our staff reports, and I promise Mr. Fry is going to be brief because he does have to leave immediately after his presentation. And then we'll get to our student presenters. So, Mr. Fry, Dr. Fry. Tonight we are going to talk a little bit about the third grade guarantee. When I say a little bit, I mean a little bit. Something new this year.
All right. Thank you. So the third grade guarantee has actually been in place since last year. We talked a little bit about it last year, but this is the first year where there is the potential for students to be retained because of it. So we thought we'd walk through, just remind what is it, how's it work, and then go through our plan of attack in Granville. So first off, Ohio's third grade guarantee policy was created to really provide support for struggling readers in grades K through 3. Third grade is that last year, and that's where retention potentially comes into play. That's sort of what most people probably think about when they think of third grade guarantee, but it's actually really for grades K through 3. requires districts to retain any third grade student who does not attain an on-track score before starting fourth grade. Now, you could retain in kindergarten, first, second, if a student wasn't on track, but you're not required to. And where this come from, Ohio looked to Florida, who has similar legislation that's been in place for a few years prior, and they had seen dramatic improvement for retained students in their overall performance in years following. I put a little asterisk there because it has only been in place for a few years now, and so we'll see if that continues. The other thing that Florida boasts about since they put their version of the third grade guarantee in place, is fewer and fewer students each year that needed to be retained across the state in third grade. And so from that standpoint, it probably is a positive. If districts weren't already doing something from a reading intervention standpoint for K through 3, it wouldn't surprise me that those percentages would start to get smaller as they did put in interventions. We have been intervening with our students in grades K through 3 for years now. So really this hasn't been a huge change for us. But how does it work? Well, each fall, every student in grades K through 3 takes a diagnostic assessment. You can either take the state diagnostic or there are a list of approved diagnostics. For us, we use the Dibbles Next for K through 3 for the reading diagnostic. It has to be done by September 30th of each year, and then there's an on-track score, and it's different at each grade level. So if a student does not score on track in the fall, they have to be on either a reading improvement or a reading monitoring plan. The plan is developed collaboratively with parents and teachers. And we have to report those results every year to the state. We do that through our EMIS system. And if I have a student who is on a plan and I'm a teacher in K through 3, I need to be qualified to teach that child above and beyond just my regular certification. There's numerous ways that teachers can show that they're qualified, including if they have a master's degree in reading or if they have a K-12 reading endorsement. There's actually a test that the state has just created this year that if a student gets a passing score on this assessment, then they also could be qualified. All of our teachers currently are qualified in one manner or another. And then what I'll do is throughout, I'll reference the Ohio Revised Code that specifically speaks to each piece as that happens. And so if a student is on a reading improvement or monitoring plan, now it's required by law that you must provide intensive intervention. We've already been providing that either through our intervention specialists or our reading intervention teachers. Most districts would call those Title I teachers, like I said, for some time. Retention. So if a student is retained by the third grade guarantee, and I'll abbreviate it from here on out, the interventions must include at least 90 minutes of reading instruction. So we're not at that point where we're retaining anyone, but if we did it, you must offer at least 90 minutes of instruction daily. That can include the regular classroom instruction that already happens. And so, again, that'll be no issue for us. If we get to the point where we need to retain someone, we definitely have that time built in within our day. Districts must also offer retained students the option to receive intervention from a provider other than the district. Again, we're not at that point yet, but if we needed to, we could do that. It's pretty obvious, well, it should be obvious, hopefully, to most people that the remediation should be targeted to the students' identified reading deficiencies. We have several different diagnostic tools that we use to identify specifically where the student's deficiency is. And so when we pull students for that intense intervention, it's either one-on-one or in very small groups of students with similar deficiencies. And then this is an interesting one. The law does not provide parents or guardians the right to refuse retention. So there's no ORC beside that because it doesn't specifically say parents can't, but I think the understanding is that since it doesn't allow for it, it's not allowed. Of course, until someone would challenge it, and then we'd see what happens there. Fortunately, we're not in the space where we will have any parents that will need to do that because we have no one who will need retention. And then districts are, by law, have to have a policy for mid-year promotion. We've had that in place for some time. The idea being, if a student did need to be retained, as soon as they're able to show that they're back on track, that you would get them back into their normal grade level with their peers, their age peers. Now there are a few exemptions, like most policies, to the retention with the third grade guarantee. And so those are, if a student has a disability that is severe enough that their curriculum is significantly different from a typical student, that child would be exempt from retention. Also, if a student requires accommodations that are beyond those that are allowable as outlined in Ohio Administrative Code. Really what this is saying is, at that point, you're really not talking about an accommodation, you're talking more about what I would call a modification. So that would be, if I'm taking a reading assessment, the assessment is trying to determine my ability to read. So I can't have someone read a passage to me. If I'm doing that, I really modify what the test is trying to assess. So if a student needs that type of an accommodation or modification, that child would be exempt from this policy. Or if I needed to go and, let's say there's a question and there's 4 responses and we're taking 2 of those responses away, like we would do on an alternate assessment, then that student would be exempt as well. Limited English proficient students who are enrolled in U.S. schools for less than 3 years and have also received less than 3 full academic years of intervention from an ESL program would be exempt from the retention. And then lastly, if a student had previously been retained in either kindergarten, first, or second, and has received the intensive remediation required by law for at least 2 years, they would be exempt from being retained in their 3rd grade year. And those decisions on not retaining for the students, the first 2 bullets, really that's a team decision. A student on their individualized education plan, actually, does that change the program, not plan any longer?
That's fine.
It is plan, okay, sorry, thanks. The team actually makes that decision with parents and guardians. So there's teachers and parents that are part of that team. And so the team kind of comes to that decision. But again, if a student was in their curriculum was significantly different, I feel confident that we would make that decision.
How significant
Sure.
difference is pretty vague, right? How significantly different is that? Would this typical student on an IEP be receiving a significantly different curriculum? Or not really?
I would say not a typical student. This would be a student who is, not actually in an inclusion setting, not in the regular classroom.
Okay,
Typically, students with significant cognitive delays.
thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, please stop me and ask as we go along. So the state realized when they put this policy in place that at that time we only had 2 times that a student was able to take an Ohio State Achievement Test in reading in 3rd grade, in the fall and in the spring. And the fall test was an end-of-year 3rd grade test, so it wasn't like it was an easier test or norm to the fall. It was a spring test just given in the fall. So it felt like 2 opportunities probably weren't enough, so they since have added a July opportunity. On top of that, the last thing I think the state wants is to have droves of students who are being retained in 3rd grade. So they allowed for an alternative assessment to be given, that if a student gets an on-track score in the alternative assessment, they can still move on. The alternative assessment is different than an alternate assessment, kind of poor choice of words in my opinion. An alternate assessment would be those students with those severe disabilities. An alternative assessment for Ohio, only 3 have been approved. The 3 are CTB McGraw-Hill's Terra Nova, and then I put the scores, not that they necessarily mean anything to you, but just what that on-track score would be. NWEA's MAP assessment, we give both the Terra Nova and the MAP in this district, and then Iowa, the Iowa test, which is a 169. So because there are technically 3 opportunities that you can take an Ohio Achievement Assessment, fall, spring, and then summer, they allow you 3 additional opportunities on one of these 3 alternative assessments, whatever district chose to give. And a district wouldn't have to, but if you did, you could count those. And so because we already give those, we allow we would use those alternative scores as well. So currently, this year, the on-track score on the Ohio Achievement Assessment is a 392. We don't yet know what next year's on-track score will be. We know it'll be higher because they've been stair-stepping up. Eventually, the goal is that you have to get to proficient. A 392 is not proficient. A 400 would be a proficient. But we have not yet heard, they've not released what the score will be for next year. I only know it'll be higher. Let's see. Okay, I think that's everything on that slide. Questions about the assessments? So let's look at our results. So in the fall, we had 182 third graders. Of those, 31 were not on track. Of the 31 who did not have at least a 392, 8 were on IEPs. 1 actually moved out of the district soon after taking the test, and so kind of no longer in our mix. So that brought us to 181 by the time we got to spring. So in spring, we gave the MAP assessment like we normally would because we used it already for diagnostic purposes. Of the 181, by the time spring came around, only 15 had not attained an on-track score. Of those 15, 6 had IEPs that would have exempted them from the retention. At the end, finally we had the spring Terra Nova, when, again, still 181 students. We hadn't lost anyone since the fall. And at that point, only 4 had not yet attained an on-track score. All 4 were on IEPs that would allow them to be exempt. So the good news is we have no students who are in need of retention. But we still need to have a plan in place because obviously when we started the year, we didn't know if we would or wouldn't have anyone who needed retention. So our plan, initially we offered intervention to all of our students who were not on track beginning in October. And technically it started before that because if I was a kindergarten student who was not on track, I was already going to get services from the start of the school year in first grade and then so on in second grade. But after taking the diagnostics again each September, immediately starting in October, we're getting a plan in place. As soon as we have that plan in place, we're beginning intervention so that we have as much time providing intervention as possible. The good news is very few students are identified in the fall that we didn't already know about by the time they're in third grade. And where it happens often, it's a new student to us. We provide numerous opportunities for students to attain an on-track score. We have the 3 opportunities for the state test, and then we have 3 additional from our alternative assessments. Actually, so far we've only had to use 5. We were not going to have anyone take the summer test in July since they've already attained an on-track score. But we will provide intervention in the summer for any student who is not on track by the end of the school year. We actually decided that those 15 students that by the time we had finished the spring MAP assessment who had not yet attained the on-track score, that we felt that they were potentially fragile enough with their reading comprehension that we would go ahead and offer them summer intervention. So we did offer the intervention. Even though we didn't have to, we went ahead and offered that intervention. For any student to take that July OAA summer administration, they would have to go through some intervention prior. So we wanted to go ahead and have that in place. And we knew there was the potential that even after the 6 opportunities, there could be someone who needed to be retained. Again, we're not, I can't speak that the administration is not in favor of retention. We do not believe that there is any compelling research that shows that the gains that are made aren't soon lost in future years. So our plan is that if a student in third grade does not attain an on-track score and they're not exempted by any of the other exemptions, we're still going to move them to GIS for 4th grade because they need to have 4th grade for math, science, social studies, etc. Plus, we think it's less traumatic to stay in third grade and be retained as opposed to moving on with your same age peers. We do know that we'll need to provide intervention to you, so what we'll do is you will take 4th grade coursework, and then Mrs. Burrs was able to build into the day enough intervention time that we would actually send, our plan initially was to send the reading intervention teacher that the students were working with at the elementary to GIS for a period of time to provide that intervention. They already had a relationship with that teacher because she would have been working with them all of their third grade year anyway. So, and that was also the person who provides the summer intervention. So an even stronger relationship, so then we move that person up. Much easier to move the teacher to the student than to lose a lot of time trying to transport the student back to GES. And then that would continue throughout 4th grade or until they attained the on-track score and or we felt comfortable that they were confident, we were confident in where they were so that they didn't need that extra support. So even if they attained the on-track score early in the fall, but we felt they still needed the intervention, we would continue out throughout the year so that they didn't fall back, after that intervention went away. So we want to make sure that support was there all year for them. So that is our approach and our plan for the third grade guarantee. Again, we don't need to put this plan in place at least the last part of the plan in place for this year, but we have it and feel confident with it moving forward. Questions?
So the testing was for third grade kids that were not on track at those various times. Did we have a communication out to parents at the time of that, and how did that go, and what was the reaction? Because I imagine 31 out of the class of third graders was a pretty big number, right? And I'm not sure how the letter was phrased, or what was kind of the general feedback about the...
We had letters, but because by law we have to provide a letter. But what we did was, it fell right in line with conferences, and so we reached out to those parents first by phone to let them know that we need to talk to them about this, and then the teacher had the conversation with, so we talked to teachers, and the teachers had the conversations with the parents about it, so that everyone was clear about, you know, what it meant and how things would progress. Now, the alternative assessments, we didn't find out about those until well into the school year. So once we found out about those, then again we reached out to parents by phone. At that point, there were fewer parents because we had already given the Terra Nova at that time and didn't even realize it was going to be an assessment that we could use as an alternative assessment. So then we reached out to parents and had a conversation with them as more and more people sort of fell off because they attained that score. You know, it's kind of, I can't even imagine how stressful that would be. I know personally I had a cousin who their child, you know, right up until the end, finally got that score, and they were just a wreck about it. And so, you know, we were trying to reach out to people as quickly as possible to just keep them informed, and then also let them know as soon as their child attained that score, so it wasn't something just weighing on them. And even I was in a meeting with a parent here in our district, and it was like, you know, her mom just broke down in tears, you know, when we told her that, you know, that her son had finally attained that score. So I mean, it's incredibly stressful, not just for kids but for parents as well. So, but we were in communication via phone and then in person with all those parents that it affected.
So if a student is either not on track and they're going up to 4th grade, or they've just made on track and they're up to 4th grade, and they may be getting follow-up intervention, right?
Sure.
Do they get other supports because the shift in the curriculum is depending on their ability to be able to read, to learn at that point, as opposed to learning to read?
So, I mean, some of these, like at this point, our students who didn't get the score are already on a plan, an intervention plan, and so those interventions will continue.
Are they only reading it? That's my question. Are they only reading interventions, or are there other subjects going to be included in that? Because
Sure.
if they have an IEP, then yes, everybody should be on board. If they don't necessarily have an IEP, that's kind of where my
Right.
question is going, because there's not something necessarily keeping everybody else on track for.
So Mrs. Burr's built in some intervention blocks that any student can be a part of. So she is aware of the students, the 15, who did not get the score by spring. We felt like the ones in the fall, I mean, she's aware of them, but to not necessarily be on track in the fall for an end of year thing, you know, that there was still a lot of time there. So we don't want to provide intervention to someone who doesn't need it either, where then that can be a detriment as well. So she's aware, and they have blocks of time and staff available to provide interventions for students who are maybe at risk, as a way to put it, that's not necessarily on an IEP. So yes, we do have those things in place. Now, like on which specific subject it would be,
What would depend on?
it's kid by kid, absolutely, case by case, absolutely.
I think it's important to note that, you know, any policy that comes from the state tends to have some unintended consequences, but I think the intent behind this legislation was to put in place supports for kids that potentially didn't have supports in the past. I think, you know, listening to Tom, you understand that we've been doing a lot of these things to make sure that we have supports in place for students that need interventions. And so I think the unintended consequence of this policy is what you've heard about as far as the anxiety from parents and the retention aspect that really doesn't have a research base to support it. So we're trying to take, you know, maybe a lemon there and make it into lemonade, and continue to provide what our students need in a way that we think is best for our kids in Greenville. And I think the good news is currently our plan is working pretty well, and we hope it continues to work well for our students and parents.
I like that we take the perspective, it's not really about attaining that score, it's about attaining readers who are confident and comfortable. And so I'm pleased that we continue to provide supports, and not that we wouldn't, but just from what you're talking about, it's really not about a score, it's about having students being confident readers, so.
Right. You can hit the score and be fragile.
Right, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only reason we even talk about the score is just because make sure parents know so we can ease their anxiety that, yes, your child can move on to 4th grade. There's no issues there at all, and then talk about the supports that we'll provide along with that.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And next, we are going to transition to two other seniors that, didn't need to come back, but are willing to come back and talk about their experiences. We have Ms. Anderson and Ms. Troutman, who are going to talk a little bit about their experience in China.
Okay, so we were part of the trip, the Global Scholars trip that went to China this spring.
Yep. So this is kind of a collage of a whole bunch of different experiences we had. You'll probably see pictures similar to this throughout the PowerPoint.
Okay, so pretty much we're just going to take you day by day through our trip. So after a 14-hour plane ride to Shanghai, we finally made it. And this was our first stop. It was the Jade Buddha Temple, where people would come and pray. And
It was our first really immersive experience because while it was slightly awkward because it was a religious place for them and we were acting as tourists, it was very interesting to see their culture in this aspect.
after that, we traveled to the silk factory where they showed us the way that they made silk, and then to the Shanghai Urban Planning Center, which was really cool. It had like a huge layout of Shanghai, and it was massive.
It was bigger than this room, probably twice this room.
Oh yeah, it was massive. And then we went to the Nanjing Road, which is this big shopping road. So down here is the old side, and then over here is the new side of the road.
It was kind of similar to Easton in the manner that it was a kind of a public area. So there were shoppers, but then there were just people who were enjoying the nice day. We were lucky enough for the time that we were in China that we actually had very little smog. So
Yeah, the blue sky.
yeah,
That
the
does
blue
not
sky is
happen.
pretty exciting.
Does not happen usually. And then we went to the Yuan Garden, which is this huge garden in the middle of Shanghai that this guy built, and it used to be his personal garden.
Yeah, so what was interesting about this garden was, we had guides throughout the trip. So we had Michael, who was our guide who took us through all of China, and then we had people who were specific to the city. So our guide specific to the city talked to us about the story behind this garden. Kind of something I thought was interesting was throughout the garden there were 3 stone dragons. Since this was a personal garden, dragons weren't actually allowed, but the guy managed to get this past the emperor by saying that there were only 3 toes instead of 4.
3 or 4 toes. There weren't 5, so they weren't really dragons, or else he would have been killed. So this is the bund. This is kind of what you think of when you think of Shanghai, because this has all been built in the past 25 years. So you can just see how urban it has become, really. So night and day. It was really fun, pretty much.
So the reason we came to China was for this Global Leaders Conference. And what was really great about this was it was a 2-day event. And not only were we meeting with people from throughout China, but throughout the US as well. So if you notice, we've got Karen's group and then my group. And for me, I don't actually travel much. So meeting people just from across the US was really good for me. And the perspectives that we got from each other were great, without even adding in the Chinese students. And then we had the Chinese students adding in their thoughts And what we were doing was, we were working on problem solving, especially with the global economy. So because we were in China, like my group was trying to think about what are some problems that are associated with China, especially like drinking water. And we could talk to these students. I think the two in my group were about the equivalent of 10th grade. And we could see their perspective on how they get clean water, because there is no such thing as clean water coming out of a tap in China.
It's very true.
So it was a fun event too. On the bottom right, you can see there's a light show going.
Yeah.
They had a dancing panda at one point. They had dragons. So it was overall a very good, interesting, informative experience.
And I also thought it was interesting because we had, well, at least in my group, we had the New York International School. So I even had people from like Mexico or Peru. So, and my best friend, Ambulance, who was up there. Anyways. So after the conference, we had to wind down and relax. So we went to a karaoke bar. And that's Mr. Renath right there. So it was nice because, you know, we had great chaperones. I don't think any of the other chaperones took their students out at night into the city and like kind of let them explore, but like Mr. Bernath was all for it. So it really definitely added a really nice element to the trip that we had chaperones that were willing to take us out and explore the city.
It did, because we got away from the tourist track of what all the other groups were doing. And, you know, this is, well, not something that a Shanghai person does every single day. It's something they've definitely experienced. So I thought that was nice that we were able to step out of the bounds just a little bit.
Yes. Okay, so then the trip to Beijing I thought was really cool because we got to ride the bullet train, which went up to, gosh, like 270 miles per hour. So it took only 5 hours to get to Beijing, where I think Michael told us it would have taken like 13 hours if we would have driven. So that was really fun.
On the left, something interesting to notice was the fast food in China. So it's the similar idea to in America, but just different foods. And we didn't speak Chinese, and the restaurant employees didn't speak much English, but we would point to an item on the menu and they would serve it to us and we would eat it. And we didn't know what it was, but it worked.
Okay, so once we finally got to Beijing, our first stop was a school, a typical school, and it was really cool because we got to play basketball with them, and they were actually pretty decent.
An interesting thing about the school visit was they were very careful not to show us much of the actual school. Notice we have all basketball pictures. It's because we walked through the inside of the school past some interesting display cases of stuffed animals, but they did not actually show us classrooms or any of the academics. So that was kind of an interesting, we were all kind of talking about that afterwards. You know, they just showed us their basketball team.
Yeah. This is the 798 Modern Art District, which is named after the factory number 798. And it was a nice break because this cafe up here served cheeseburgers, which is really nice. And then there's a place across the street that served pizza. So by this time, all of us were kind of craving something other than Chinese food. But it was really interesting because there was this graffiti that was just everywhere, and it was so colorful and just so different from anything else you had seen so far.
So that was fun too, because we rode our bus to a certain point, and then we couldn't actually drive through the streets anymore, so we went on a walk. And so that was interesting again, because we were seeing more of the, not just traffic zooming by, we were actually seeing the streets of China.
Okay, and then we went to the really touristy part. So this Tiananmen Square up here, and then the Forbidden City. It was really amazing because, again, we had blue sky because they had shut down the factories, some of the factories, because Michelle Obama was actually following us through China. So they wanted to make a good impression.
So I think Mr. Hopping and I decided that if you look down in the far left, that's the Temple Mulan slid down.
Yeah.
So that puts it in perspective.
So this was another fun aspect. The traditional Peking duck dinner was amazing, and it was crazy because the lady was like, "Oh, you just wrap it up real quick, and we're all like, what? But, and then down here is the Kung Fu show, which was really interesting because they would switch back and forth between having English subtitles and Chinese subtitles and people speaking Chinese and people speaking English, which I thought was very interesting that they would even have English at all.
Looking at the top right, we have a number of food pictures. We could have had an entire PowerPoint of food pictures. We didn't actually know what we were eating most of the time. My table got very excited at one point because we thought that we were eating jellyfish. Turns out they were just rice noodles.
That's really good.
So that was definitely an experiment the entire trip. And I was a little off Chinese food once I came back to the United States. But it was fun.
But it's not even like American Chinese food. Like you can't go and find orange chicken or General Tso's over there. It's not even the same thing. Okay, so day 2, Great Wall of China, which was amazing and really steep. It's a lot steeper than you think it is.
Yeah, I mean, you think, oh, walking on the Great Wall, they had to defend it, right? They had to be able to walk along it at least. I cannot imagine if it was raining how you would have walked up it.
It was so
Again, we had a pretty day. If it had been raining, I don't think we would have been able to walk up it. There are no steps. It's just flat, sloping surface. And as our guide at one point put it, he says, when you walk along this wall, you're going to think, how could they defend it or attack it? I mean, it seems impenetrable. So that was very interesting.
And then we had some fun at Olympic Park with the bird's nest and Mr. Hopping looking very awesome. So they just had these dolls everywhere, and it was just from the Beijing Olympics, and it's so cool that they kept it.
They made it a public park.
Yeah.
So there were just a whole bunch of people walking around, flying kites. There were vendors.
Mhm.
Lots of vendors in China. They're always trying
Yeah.
to sell you something.
I mean, everything you can think of. It's crazy. This is a traditional tea house where we went and we did a traditional tea ceremony.
It was good.
It was really good. Yeah. Okay, so this is the Hutong district. This was awesome.
It was our last night in China,
Mm-hmm.
and it was by far, I think, in my opinion, the most fun. Dinner was amazing. But so
Yeah.
we went on this ride throughout these tiny streets. Sometimes we would go side by side.
And rickshaws.
Yes. But
There's
other
no cars.
Yeah, other
like that.
times we have to do just one person, and there'd be all these pedestrians, and you'd kind of be afraid you were going to run them over. But it was good.
And then there was these Chinese kids everywhere, and they would be like, hello, hello, and we'd try and be like, oh, ni hao, but you know, it's just, they were so cute, and they kept doing the peace sign everywhere. It was adorable.
So we thought we were done, and then we're like, oh, let's take a subway ride and go to a night market.
Yes.
So in the top left, you can see more selling things. Then there were also the option to eat all sorts of strange foods. I didn't actually see anyone Chinese eating these. They were just entrapping us.
Which should have been our first clue to not eat them.
These are only a couple of the things that they were selling. Robbie
Yeah.
ate
Robbie
Everything.
ate everything.
which I think amounted to like 9 different foods.
Thankfully, we didn't find the spiders until the next morning. They're like, they're this big. They're huge, hairy spiders.
If you look at the seahorses on the left, they were, in that picture, they were probably still moving, which was a little freaky.
Yeah.
And then they would flash fry them. I did try the seahorse. It's not that bad. Okay, scorpion, sorry. Yeah, they're seahorses
The
and
little
scorpions.
scorpions,
I
not
tried
the
the
big
scorpions.
ones.
Scorpions
like
aren't too
these.
bad. People did not recommend the giant scorpions.
But they ate them.
Yes.
Did they taste like chicken?
No, they were really gross, apparently.
The scorpion I ate just tasted like burned crispiness. The cockroach, I don't even know what it tasted like, but it was not good.
It was disgusting. So yeah, they had everything from lizards to starfish to anything you can think of. That
There was
had
some
legs.
fun squid bowls.
It was gross. So that was our last trip anywhere in the city, and then we went home. So.
Chef Greg, what do you think? You make that appetizing? Yes.
So while that was our last night in China, I would like to point out that we then had the 13 and a half hour plane ride back to the United States. And those plane rides in and of themselves were an immersion experience. Both times I was seated with non-speaking, people who could not speak any English. I spoke no Chinese. And it's interesting to sit for 13 hours with someone you cannot communicate with. So it was a good learning experience in and of itself.
I did not have that experience. I did get the middle seat though on the way over in between a mother and her child. And when I asked if she wanted to switch, she said, "No, I like the aisle, he likes the window." So,
You take care of it.
yeah, and then proceeded to ask me for parenting advice. Okay, so that was.
But so that was just kind of how
Interesting.
every little experience, even when we didn't look for it to be a learning experience, taught us something.
Yeah,
So
it was probably the greatest experience I've ever had in high school. It was awesome. And again, the chaperones definitely made it because we were the only group that went to like these markets and stuff. I don't think the other groups went. So thank you, Mr. Burnett.
thank you.
So you guys traveled, the other students traveled to the same places you did?
Right, so we would be in the same hotels as like the Dublin and Upper Arlington people, but we were the only ones that braved the subways. So, yeah, it's
So,
awesome.
this is fantastic. I'm just really jazzed about the whole program and so forth. So to think about like the future of this program, what was it, either about the location or about the things that you did there that were the best that we should be thinking about? Like, what advice do you have for the district about how to choose future locations or what events to do when we're there? Was it about the conference, or was it about more about the subways, or was it about, you know?
I'd have to say it was more about the subways. It was nice to have the conference, it really was. I thought it put a good cap on the experience. What really any country, I would suggest, not going to England, because that cultural immersion in a country where, while it was hard not knowing the language, it was so telling to us how important that language then was. You can think, it's really not important that I know a second language. When am I ever going to use that? And then you go to a foreign country and you're like, all of these people speak this language and I need to be able to communicate with them. And so, I know Spanish didn't do me much good there, but it really impacted my mindset about learning Spanish. It's like, I need to keep doing that. Even though I went to China, it made me want to learn Spanish more, because it's like, I can do this, I can learn this second language. So I think any experience that teaches you the importance of language is going to be almost life-changing.
Or just in general, the world is becoming more globalized and everyone kind of needs to be ready for it. So anywhere that you go, that you're interacting with different cultures, different people than you're used to, would just be a great experience. Yeah.
Which I think summarizes really the intent of what we're trying to build with the Global Scholars process. Giving kids the opportunity to interact and learn outside of the classroom in different contexts. And I think, you heard some examples of some of the things that they took away from the experience. I went and I listened to some of the other students present at the Columbus Council on World Affairs. And, one student talked about how when he was in Tiananmen Square, he asked somebody what this box was, and the person said, well, that's a listening box. He said, well, what's that? And they said, they're listening to our conversations right now. And there are trucks stationed around Tiananmen Square, and he just couldn't conceive that there was that type of environment. And so, he spoke a lot about that experience and how it rocked his world and how he really appreciated the freedoms that we have in the United States. And so I think giving kids these experiences, putting it in a context of a longer program where you're doing some more research around international issues, I think is really going to add value to our students when they leave us. And, we're not preparing kids for high school. We're preparing kids to be in an environment out there. When David goes to hire somebody, he's looking for a student or an employee that has a wide range of experiences to draw from. So I'm excited. First of all, you keep referencing the chaperones. The chaperones only did that because they had students that they felt that they could trust. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done that. So, you know, the fact that you were interested, you're good students, you're good kids, you're good people, the chaperones really just capitalized on that. So it really is about the quality of our students as opposed to the quality of our chaperones. Although, did you get that on tape? Although, I do know the song that he was singing at the karaoke, and we won't mention it. So, but I think this is something that I'm really looking forward to in the future for Granville Schools. Our next group is going to Costa Rica and experiencing more of an environmental perspective as opposed to a global economy. We're currently working with the leadership of Education First to talk about other summits that may be in different locations for our students in the future. So I think we're really on the right track here. We have 87 students signed up for, 87, Ryan? Yeah, for our Global Scholars Path that are coming in to the high school.
It's huge. And you guys were the pioneers.
Yeah.
Set the bar for everybody, which was really great.
And just so you know, Mr. Durst is going to Costa Rica, so.
Is he coming back?
Mr. Burnett set the bar high, so. We'll be karaoke.
Take an umbrella.
Yeah, take an umbrella. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming and sharing your experience. All right, now, and you can, I won't make you stay. I promise. Thank you. All right, and then you have a,
No, we have one more before that, public comment.
yeah, I know, I was just gonna.
Oh, you're gonna do that?
Yeah, I was just gonna pull it.
But you can minimize it so it's not,
Yep.
or just close the computer or whatever, since it's not out. Okay. We've come to the part of the meeting where we would entertain public comments. If you'd like to address the board, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and you can speak for up to 3 to 5 minutes. Is there anybody who'd like to address the board at this time?
Sure, I'll take a shot at that. Let me pass this out, whoever has a copy of basically what I want to talk about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Brian Flynn. I have been living in the area for 5 years. My children both attend Granville schools, and I've been a substitute teacher for the last 3 years within the district. And I wanted to raise the awareness of the fact that substitute teachers have not had a pay increase within the last 12 years. If pay had been increased to only match the rate of inflation, it would currently be $113.33 per day. I highlighted that in Exhibit A, which was from the government website of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Also wanted to point out that respect for employees and money are related to the quality of what you're going to get back from your employees. Granville is currently paying $86 a day for substitute teachers. New Albany in the fall will be paying $95 a day, and Zanesville City pays $70 a day. Exhibit B highlights the fact that according to the education.ohio.government listing website, Granville's ranking within the state is 34, New Albany's is 67, and Zanesville City is 648. The next two bullet points, I just wanted to point out that workers in Bangladesh who are pathetically paid at a rate of $68 a month. Actually, they've just been given a 79% increase in the minimum monthly wage to $68 a month. Even those poorly paid workers have been given a raise within the last 12 years, whereas Granville substitute teachers have received a 0% increase in pay in the last 12 years. One of the articles I was given when I did my one-day of substitute teacher training highlighted the statistic that children have substitute teachers for nearly a year of their kindergarten through 12th grade education, which is Exhibit C of the New York Times. It's a 4-page article, but it's on page 3 towards the top. Should be highlighted in your sheets that quotes that statistic. So if you do a rough figuring on that, that means that substitutes are providing staffing equal to 1/12 of the staff that we have at the school system at any particular point in time. I view this as a couple problems. The major one being that I think over the last 12 years, the board has sort of not used its authority or ceded it to administration in regards to setting a budget. I don't think it's right or proper that you would give 90 or 95% of your staff a raise and then ignore the other, whether it's 5, 10, or 2%, and not at least give them some recognition of their worth or their increased worth as an employer. I don't know too many people who've had a job for 3 years and not received some sort of raise without seriously looking for another job. And I definitely don't know anybody who's had a job for 12 years without any increase in pay that would have stayed at that job or certainly wouldn't have looked for another position. As I noted at the bottom of one of these bullet points, we have Teacher Appreciation Week, we have Staff Appreciation Day, and we have Substitute Teacher Appreciation nothing, basically. And I wanted to conclude with a secondary problem, is it sort of, again, highlights why teachers have unions, because without collective bargaining, the propensity to disregard and disrespect individual workers rises exponentially, or it's just too prevalent to occur. So at some point in time, I would like the board to address this issue and put it on the agenda and change policy and attempt to do whatever they can to treat all staff and personnel within the school district with the same level of respect. And that concludes what I have to say, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you for coming tonight, Mr. Flynn, and for providing us with this information. I think the next steps are really for Mr. Brown and Mr. Sobel to look into the issue, and when they do their research, then they will present recommendations to the board. And they're really the appropriate ones to be doing the research, since they're ones who are interacting and deal with the budgets most most of the time, every day. So I will put that to you to take a look into the issue and get back to the board when we have more information.
And I assume that you will let Mr. Flynn know when that's going to come back before us again, so he can come back and participate in that.
Oh, and one point I wanted to bring out about the earlier presentation about the third grade guarantee, where it said that the teachers have to be certified. That's true except for the substitutes. Because I've done that. I've substituted for the intervention teachers. And I'm certainly not certified in any way, shape, or form. And I've done it multiple times, which worked out fine. I enjoy teaching children to read, and I'm pretty good at it. But that's just another point we sort of have to remember here, that we have all these standards and that apply to the regular teachers, but don't apply to the substitutes whatsoever. I mean, there's been times I've walked into a math classroom and I've had to teach math to 16 special needs students with very little, plans whatsoever. So it's a challenging job, but it's rewarding. But I'd just like to bring it to the board's attention that I think there's a few issues that need to be addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, unless,
Hmm?
no, we're going to do board reports now, moving on to board reports.
I do not have anything to report from the Newark Granville Community Authority.
Thomas?
I don't think I have any real updates for the GEF as well. I was not able to attend the last meeting, and I think they're got a little bit postponed through the summer, but I assume they'll be gearing back up. Jeff, was there anything else from GEF meeting of 8? I believe we talked a little bit
No,
about
they recognized outgoing members and thanked them for their service and set a few future meeting dates, and that was it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, they just finished the grant cycle and things like that. too, so-
Well, and there was a nice a little blurb in the paper this week about the students that received scholarships.
Granville Foundation, right?
Yeah. Right. That would be Amy.
Yes, but they probably haven't met this week, so.
Next week. All right, I have a couple of updates because I always do. Right? Anyway, so CTEC and legislative updates. I just wanted to highlight a few things about the
you
CTEC
have a
honors ceremony.
Slide today.
I know. Well, sometimes I feel like, it's easier to look at something than just listen to me drone on and on and on. So this year, there were 266 students that graduated from CTEC in 22 different programs, although I don't think we graduated anybody in robotics and automated manufacturing. So that was the first year of this program. So next year will be the first class of graduates from that program. Almost all of these, if not all of that, these programs have national certifications that students have to take as part of their program. And this year they have it, and they actually every year, but they had a really high passage rate for almost all of their certifications. Nearly 100% of all students in all the programs passed the certifications that they needed to pass. And then there was some secondary and higher level certifications that some students took, but maybe not all of the students in the program. But it was a very successful class this year. And they earned or were awarded over $560,000 in post-secondary scholarships. So students are going on to, community college, but also four-year institutions as well as working and the military. So I just wanted to give you a few highlights on the different programs that the students there are doing and some of their successes for post-secondary options. Turning to the legislative update. So the governor last week signed 5 MBR bills that have implications for public education. Just to let you know, the Ohio Legislative Service Commission gave us a 95-page document summarizing those, all of those pieces of information that will, or all of the legislation that will affect what we do. Not all of them will affect Granville, but what affects public education. But for the sake of time, I'm only going to highlight 3 of those here today, the Ohio teacher evaluation, the high school graduation requirements, and the College Credit Plus program. And again, this just happened last week, and so I think Jeff and Mike will be going through the legislation piece by piece and be able to give us a more significant update in August or September. Changes to OTES were things that we've actually been talking about, but they were signed into to law last week. And they are that teachers who rate accomplished will now not have to be evaluated every year, but every 3 years. But at the same time, if as long as it's every 3 years as long as their student growth piece is average or higher in each year of evaluation. At the same time, and then for teachers rating skilled, the evaluation will happen every 2 years again if they continue to have average or higher growth. Regardless of that fact, even the accomplished and skilled teachers will have one observation and one conference with in off evaluation years with an administrator. So they will still have some contact and some evaluation, but it won't have to be nearly as in depth as what would happen during a normal evaluation. They also provided an option for districts not to evaluate teachers who have been on leave for half the year or more, or who will be retiring. Again, it seems a lot of time to be spent for somebody who's not there, either who's not going to be there, or it's a option just to make things more flexible for us and to try and alleviate some of the burden that is happening with the amount of time that these evaluations take. And then starting 15 and 16, there will be the option to go from right now, evaluations are based on 50% growth and 50% teacher performance, based on principals evaluation. It's all principals at this point, you're doing our evaluating. But in 15, 16, we can shift that around a little bit to these percentages that you see here, with that extra 15% coming from either student surveys, teacher self-evaluations, peer review, evaluations, or a student portfolio. The one interesting thing, or not so interesting thing, is that one of those 4 optional pieces has to be approved by ODE. So if we come up with a student survey, or they will come up with a student survey that has to be used, if we want to have 15% of a teacher's evaluation come from that option. You want to add anything?
I think just related to OTES in general, remember some districts are just piloting it this year. We were fully implemented this year because we were part of Race to the Top. So we worked through the Race to the Top transformation team to put together what our OTES model was going to look like. We did choose 50% student growth, 50% teacher performance measure. And we're working through the SLO process, and we've written into the collective bargaining language the ability to continue to adjust based on new pieces of legislation that come out. So we'll work collaboratively with the association to make any potential changes to the evaluation system moving forward. This gives us options. This is what we advocated for. Obviously, evaluating every employee every year is a challenge with limited administrative staff, and so there was some recognition related to that. And so I think you'll see multiple revisions to the OTES policy language, or the teacher evaluation policies and statute over the next several years.
So does this roughly cut in half the number of evaluations we need to do?
Yes and no. Full-blown evaluations, yes. But there is that provision that you still have to do one observation and one conference in off evaluation years. So there is still a requirement to touch every employee through an evaluation process, but it's significantly modified. But yes, it does give us much more room within the academic day.
Is the internal cross-functional team to be able to take this and integrate it into Granville form, or what's the timing of that out of our contract negotiations? And
That committee is formed already. So what
is that the vehicle for kind of communicating this stuff down through the
Yep.
organization as well and so forth?
Yep. So I have a couple of emails from the association representative for OTES, kind of outlining, okay, what do we need to communicate?
So the second thing I wanted to highlight was that they finally decided on the high school graduation requirement. So students entering 9th grade next year will actually know what they need to do to graduate. There'll be 7 end-of-year course exams over the 4 years in high school: English, geometry, algebra, physical science, American history, and American government. And I guess Ryan, when he presented, talked about a system of points, which I guess is yet to be determined, in coming up with what the number of points rather than the number of credits, I suppose, that you have to have in order to graduate. But in addition to those end-of-year course exams, there are a couple of alternative paths that students can take. Scores on advanced placements or baccalaureate exams, dual credit courses in various subjects can be substituted for the end-of-course exams, as can be industry-recognized credentials and nationally recognized job skills assessments. The other piece that I found interesting is that the legislature feels that every student should be able to take a college readiness exam, and so they will actually provide the ACT free to all juniors beginning in 2015. That I didn't know was coming. So those are the 2018. So the OGT will be out for this class. But
So this is.
And next year OGT will be used.
We'll use, but for the
Right.
9th grade, or the
10th
10th
graders.
and 10th graders, right? So starting with the class of 2018, which are the rising freshmen.
Right.
Any questions? And the last piece I wanted to highlight, but I'm actually going to defer to Jeff on this, is the College Credit Plus program. Mostly because we've had college credit in schools for a long time, but
It's
so.
been called post-secondary educational options, where students can, either through dual enrollment or PSEO, obtain college credit for either classes taught by Granville teachers that qualify as college credit, and we deem them through a institution of higher education, or they actually go to the campus like OSUN or COTC and take a class through them and earn college credit that's transferable. So it's kind of a redo of that program. The intent, like I said earlier with the 3rd grade guarantee, the intent is to provide access to students that don't typically have access to college in their high school career to gain access more broadly. However, there are some unintended consequences because currently a lot of the college credit that is purchased is passed on to the parents who can pay. Under the College Credit Plus, that falls within our state foundation payment or state allocation for basic aid. So again, it could be a bigger drain, so to speak, on the overall impact of the state funding model for us. But there are things that we have, I think, in place right now with AP courses and some of the other offerings that we currently provide our students that are comparable to the rigor that is in dual enrollment and PSEO. There are a lot of positives to it. There are some unintended consequences. I think if we were advocating for it to be means tested, so if you have the ability to pay for the credit, that you should pay as a parent, just like we means test free and reduced lunch. We do it in a lot of varieties. We waive fees based on that criteria. So I don't think that this is in its final version as well. I think there's going to be movement related to the College Credit Plus program, but I think it is advantageous to kids across Ohio. So, more information to come. It's relatively a new concept. It was proposed by the Chancellor in December and has gone through several conversations in the House and Senate and came out of conference committee in its current version. So, questions that I can't answer.
Yeah, so we've done this through PSEO through things like the Kenyon collaboration and so forth, right? And that's been an option. The kids can take that as well to get the college credit for it. And in the past, it's been paid by parents to get that.
Typically, PSEO is state institutions of higher education, not necessarily private. That falls under more of a dual enrollment category, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong. But this is mostly for state institutions. That we have to create agreements with the state institutions, although there are some conversations that private institutions like Denison or Kenyon could be involved. But yes, we currently have partnerships with COTC, OSUN, Denison, Kenyon. That's about it.
So how many kids participate, and what could be the magnitude of the financial impact of this? I mean, is this like the Lincoln County Scholar things cost $100 a class, or is this more than that, or?
Well, we're still trying to figure out the financial impact of what it could be, given we have students that a lot of them can take college level coursework and be very successful. And if they have an avenue such as this to do it cost free, what impact does that have? So, more to come. We plan on doing probably a bigger presentation in August, once we have more of the details.
Which will be more than 95 pages.
Well,
Which will be more than 95 pages, I'm sure.
I guarantee you, we're not going to bring you 95 pages.
No, I mean, like, that's what you're gonna have to go
Yes,
through, is more than
we do,
95 pages.
We do,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Can we bring that up?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
There we go. Jeff, can I ask one more kind of question on staff reports relative to changes in staffing at the schools? I don't want to put it spot, but it seems like the administration team got settled out. I've seen a bunch of requests come through and new job postings and so forth that are related to reshuffling. Are there significant changes there recently? I didn't dig into exactly who those changes were.
No.
Where is that?
One of them was a retirement that you approved in the
Okay, so
earlier
it's just posted,
meeting,
okay.
and it's being posted, and we did an internal transfer to that position, and now we're posting
Okay.
another position. So a lot of it is reshifting current positions, but we have not had any additional resignations or retirements that aren't currently on the agenda.
Yeah,
But we do have some new hiring to do.
okay. Action agenda?
Okay. Action item 9.01, bus instruction contract. This is to approve a contract with a bus instructor for in-bus instruction. When Mr. Clary left the district earlier in the year, he was our in-bus driver instructor. And so we had to subcontract with another district that can provide that service. And so that's to approve that individual contract. We are currently training an internal person to.
Which is what he's doing.
Which is what he's doing, yes.
He's training someone internally to be able to train new drivers.
Correct.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Questions?
No.
Get the roll, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Just Kate.
Yeah, motion made, Russ second.
You can take the roll.
I'm working on
No,
it. Dr. Martell.
up to you.
Aye.
Mr. James.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dr. Flynn.
Aye.
I was busy confusing myself.
All right, next is action item 9.02, and I guess I'll wait for the motion and then talk about it.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Russ, second by Pete. All right, the Alliance dues. you recall, we are part of the Alliance. The Alliance is a group of 68 what are considered high-wealth school districts that formed an advocacy group to talk about the issues of being a high-wealth, high-achievement school district in the state of Ohio. And we have advocated for many of the changes that have occurred, specifically in OTES and some other pieces of current legislation. And it is to renew the dues for the upcoming year.
Any questions?
How much is that, just out of curiosity?
$3,500.
They meet Columbus.
Yeah,
usually,
I'm
right?
part of the legislative committee, and we meet once a month. And then the executive committee meets additionally another time, once a month.
How many schools are part of it?
68. And we're adding schools all the time. It's just like, it's another organization like BASA or OSBA that has a little bit of a different orientation. There are some school districts in that group that receive $218 per student
So-
from the state.
How do you determine what's the definer for wealth?
It's not an absolute criteria. I believe that they would let just about anybody into the conversation. It's just most of them are high wealth and high achievement districts.
Take the roll.
Mr. Jennings.
Aye.
Dr. Renfro.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dr. Flynn.
Aye.
We have 9.03 is an unpaid leave of absence, which is retroactive for May 21st.
So moved.
Second? You want to jump right in?
Yeah.
So, yeah, go take the roll.
Mr. Jennings.
Aye.
Dr. Renfro.
Aye.
Mr. Miller. Dr. Flynn.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Next is the food service agreement contract. Now, wait for a motion and then turn it over.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
And I'll turn it over to Mr. Sobel, who really facilitated with Kathy Heidelberg the bid process or RFP process for the food service agreement.
Yeah, we've kept up to date as a couple of meetings prior as we've gone through the process. We had 2 bids in response to the RFP, one from ABI Fresh, our current vendor, and a second from a group called the Nutrition Group, which is a company out of Pennsylvania, has most of their business in Pennsylvania, but has some in Ohio as well. Each of them provided a written proposal. We subsequently then brought them in to meet with what we call a lunch committee. There were 5 people at that meeting, myself, Kathy, our 2 FCCLA teachers, and Willie McCutcheon, who is a parent in the district. We're at the presentations that both of them made. We evaluated the proposals on 7 criteria: cost, experience, innovation, involvement, menu, on-site management, and promotion of food services. The only requirement under state law is that cost has to be the biggest factor. It does not have to be the majority factor, or so it doesn't have to be 50%. On the 7 criteria, there ended up being 2 criteria that we rated both companies evenly. There were 2 criteria where we felt the innovation group was stronger. There were 3 criteria where we felt ABI Fresh was stronger. When we got to the end of the analysis, ABI Fresh did come out slightly ahead on a scale of 100. ABI ended up with a score of 94.4 versus 86.9 for the nutrition group, and we have decided then to, based on that, to award the contract to ABI for another 5-year period. It does come with 1 year revisiting. So we are not wedded for 5 years if there ends up being issues that we feel are there. With 60 days notice, at the end of any year, we or they can terminate the contract, but it'll only come to the board once in a 5-year period. You'll be approving it for 5 years, contingent on satisfactory renewal on both our ends and ours.
Any questions?
No, it was a very exhaustive process you went through with the committee.
It was. We went through a pretty detailed process. Both groups made very good presentations, very detailed presentations.
Thank you.
Dr. Wall?
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rantel?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're very excited to be back and provide food service to the district.
Chef
Thank
Greg
you.
does a fantastic job. Anybody who can potentially make, scorpions. Just kidding. All right. The next action item is 9.05, school fees for the 14-15 school year. We have all the fees, structures for each of our buildings. I think in general, we try and keep our fees at a minimum. However, there are some consumable materials that do increase in cost that we have to adjust for inflationary increases. So,
Second.
Are there changes of significance here
yeah,
compared to last year, same as last year?
it's very similar except for items that are, note workbooks in nature.
Any other questions?
No.
Mr. Joe, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rantel?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. Action item 9.06 is administrative and exempt employee salary schedule and increase.
Second.
Okay, as you know, we have administrative staff and exempt employees that work for the administrative staff. We're recommending a 2% salary increase like the similar structure that we gave to the teaching bargaining unit.
I think it's well warranted. It matches what we agreed to do with the teaching staff, and certainly something we budgeted for intentionally. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rantel?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. 9.07 is the high school roof and dormer bid. And I'll talk a little bit about that.
So moved.
Second.
As you know, we've had dormers over the industrial tech area of the high school. We also had some over the art wing. We removed those and replaced those with the metal roof a couple of years ago. Now these dormers are leaking significantly, and it's time to eliminate them and make it a solid roof. It does exceed the $25,000 threshold, so that's why you're approving the bid.
Do you know when that construction happens?
It will happen very soon. It will happen this summer for sure. As soon as it's awarded or approved, we'll get it on the schedule.
Eric's teaching Lego classes.
You don't want it to rain on
I'm
it?
just trying to figure
It's
out.
the dry season.
Make sure he brings his umbrella.
It's supposed to rain every day.
Yes.
Yeah, you can- yeah.
It did, or today.
It did. It was a real tropical.
Yeah, like,
Yes.
Yeah.
take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rantel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
9.08 is an agreement to participate and authorize us to be a part of the Unified Purchasing Cooperative that is part of the Metropolitan Educational Council, which is kind of a collective purchasing consortium.
Yeah, this is to be on their school bus
Right.
process. We're already a member of it, but this is a separate process.
Second. This gives us some sort of buying power, additional buying power, because we're buying as part of a bigger
But
group.
and it also means that we don't have to go through an independent bid process on it when we do go to buy the bus, because they have already been through the process, they've already done the bidding process.
Now, didn't the information we got say something about they lease them also?
Yes.
Is there any reason we would want to do that?
We are looking into that option.
Yeah.
What will follow is a recommendation, we need a new 84 passenger bus for sure. So we will either purchase it outright or weigh the options of leasing to own.
Yeah, they're actually independent decisions. We can participate in this, and whether we buy outright or lease is
Right.
our choice. This doesn't impact our buying versus leasing.
No, that wasn't, I was just asking out of curiosity that we,
Yes, we are looking at the whether there are financial advantages to leasing.
Does this action item have direct costs associated with it, or is it just getting?
No, it has a direct cost of about $70.
Good ROI.
Basically, we have to pay, MEC to participate in this process, and there's a fixed cost that's spread across all the districts that do it, so.
But they make money on the savings in buses, so it's.
Right, but I think it's like, I think they said it's like $71 or something
As well.
like that. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Action item 9.09 is the Licking County Educational Service Center contract for the 2014-15 school year for the Ready, Set, Go program participation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that.
So moved.
Second.
Ready, Set, Go is an in-between preschool and kindergarten program. It's an all-year program, all-day program for students that maybe aren't ready to transition to kindergarten and need some special services.
Do we have any kids that take advantage of that?
We do.
I think we have one student, right, one student waiting to raise sick out.
Yeah.
He was, yeah,
We-
so that's for the one, this is for the contract for the one student.
And we've had years
We've
where
had
we've had
others.
higher numbers than that.
Yeah.
I think we had one last year, one as well last year.
And is the agreement pretty much the same as in the past in
Yes.
terms of cost
Yeah.
level? Okay. As well.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Okay, that leads us,
No, you get something.
oh, that's right, 10.01, which is.
Sorry.
9.19.
What did I say, Ellen?
Yeah.
9.1.
Yes, 9.10 is the mezzanine wall resolution, and once I get a motion, I'll explain.
Second.
All right, so this resolution has really two parts. It's a resolution and then a license agreement that we will enter into with the athletic boosters, who will provide the funding and the construction process for the mezzanine wall above the gymnasium stands that would block off the auditorium from the wrestling area. It's wrestling, softball, baseball, lacrosse, every group uses that, but currently our wrestlers do practice and participate up in that area. There was a presentation earlier in the year by Allison Terry, who's a member of that group that did the private fundraising for this. The estimated cost is $45,000. They currently have bankrolled $46,000. So we are ready to enter into the scheduling process and get that work initiated prior to the beginning of school is our hope. We're hoping that we can work with this construction company to make sure that it's done in time for the fall sports.
But
That-
the boosters are doing
The
the bidding.
boosters, yeah, the boosters have done bidding. Actually, the wrestling group has done the bidding.
Oh, really?
And they've worked and identified a contractor based on our specs of the wall that we need.
Oh,
Is the amount lower than what their initial proposal was?
Yeah. Their initial proposal was
Was-
$65,000,
yeah,
but
that's-
it included all the mats.
Oh, okay.
So this is just. for
Just the
of
construction,
the wall.
okay.
Yeah, I noticed the paperwork that went along with it and so forth for the official motion athletic boosters buy something, that all that stuff was.
We had that long
This was-
debate this morning.
This was, it came out of a meeting this morning. Basically, well, I talked to the attorney we use, and what you have is really a boilerplate that they recommend school districts use to protect both the district and the boosters during the process, making sure that there's permits are done, ADA things are being followed, ensuring especially that that once the project is done, it comes under the control of the school district, and the district governs the use of the new facility.
The wall.
Well, and the facility,
Yeah.
and so and mostly, it's actually it looks very comprehensive. It's boilerplate language that they were able to turn around very quickly because it's a standard contract.
And more school districts are privately funding projects like this because they don't have the capital budgets to build additional facilities, put in turf, build walls. So school districts are turning to, private donations to fund those projects. So it's a relatively standard document, but it is comprehensive.
I guess I'm really excited if the rest of us come up with $45,000 for a capital wall and the athletic boosters can facilitate, that's fantastic, right? And I just felt like, oh, this is a lot of legalese that almost seems like a barrier, like they have to have insurance now and they have to do this other kind of stuff. I wanna find ways that this is really easy for them to buy us. Scoreboards and floors and stuff like that.
And
But it just seemed like it was more elaborate, like I don't remember seeing that before, the one to buy scoreboards.
Well, scoreboards are different because
Yeah.
they're a purchased item that we installed, so they donated that item. This is a construction process, so they're going to have to, actually construct the wall, not just bring the wall in and put it there. So, it's a little different.
And they'll have equipment, they'll have supplies in the building, so making sure it's secure. And apparently, talking with the attorney, they have had instances where things have not gone well. Where the boosters, in one case, the football boosters put up the money to donate a locker room, then they said, no one can use it with the football team. And the booster said that, and there was nothing in the agreement. So this, not that this would happen here, but it's a standard protection document.
And it really is actually more advantageous for the booster group to do it this way than to donate the money to us and go through our bid process and go through, another additional process above and beyond what is currently required.
And I'm sure we're facilitating as much as possible, making this happen, because it's a
Yes.
wonderful thing and so forth. I just saw all this paperwork, I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
I don't quite know if there's constraints.
No, they're
here,
actually
if there's-
very happy about this.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's no real constraints there now.
Yeah.
And
It's just protection.
Because again, I think it's excellent, right? And I hope there's lots more projects like this that we can pull in from the community in lots of ways, so.
I agree 100%.
Did roll, please?
Mr. Miller,
Hi.
Mr. Junice,
Aye.
Dr. Rentel,
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Okay. Now we can go to the consent agenda. So 10.01, A through C. 10.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And I will talk about a few items I'd like to call your attention to. First of all, we have quite a long list of donations from some of our partners, the PTO, drama clubs, but two drama clubs, and a couple of individuals. And so we always appreciate any donations that are provided to our organization.
What's the PTO donation for?
It is smartboards,
Mm-hmm.
correct? Thank you. And I'd also like to call your attention to a couple of the new hires that we have on the agenda. If you look at Mary Jane Burgess, she actually was a former employee who left the district pursued another option and is coming back as a high school intervention specialist. We're very excited to have her. We have a replacement from Stephanie Flair in Robin Massey, who served as the elementary advanced learner specialist this past year and did a fantastic job. We're excited to have her. We have Mr. Morris, who is being hired as our elementary principal. Mr. Carpenter, who's in the back row back there, waving, who is going to assume the role as assistant high school principal, working with Mr. Durst next year as principal. And we have 5 new classified bus drivers. As you know, we had quite a few bus drivers that left this year, and we're replacing those with some new drivers. We have the Granville Christian Academy. As you know, we are the employer for the auxiliary service providers for the Granville Christian Academy, and so we have to hire their employees that fill that role. Many of the supplemental contracts for the fall are listed on page 6 and 7 and 8. We have extended time contracts for our 2 new employees, our Director of Human Resources and Operations. Their contracts don't start until July, but as you know, Tanya's in the room right now, so we have extended time contracts for her. And then the resignations, Mr. Morris of his assistant principal role and Mr. Carpenter of his mathematics teaching role. So those are the highlights. Any questions?
There's a lot of accomplishments there.
It goes fast.
Yeah.
In this meeting, but it's a lot of work.
It's all good.
Okay, take your roll, please.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Dr. Runtel.
Aye.
Dr. Cornman.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to the financial portion of the meeting.
Thank you. And first item is the monthly report for the month of May.
So moved.
Second?
I'm just, he looked at me, I thought I felt the pressure to say
He's
something.
well-trained now.
Through the highlights, again, not much happened during the month of May that was not expected to happen. That's always a good thing. Revenues and expenditures were both very much on target. The expenditures were running a little bit below estimate. That's always a good thing as well. If you look at the third page, cash flows still look good. And hopefully will continue to look good now for the next several years. You look at our expenditures to date, we are 11/12 of the way through the year, so we should be around just over that 90% mark. And you look at each of the items and we are. That's a good thing. Those are running right on track, tracking well with last year. The last 2 graphs are something new I'm trying this month. There's always new stuff coming through the software. This is just giving you an idea of the magnitude in the revenues and expenditures. There's nothing shocking in here. You see, on the revenues, we have the big jump in real estate, of course, from the levy passing, and the state aid jumps from the increases. You see the declining trend in the state tax reimbursements. That's still the final effects of the tangible property going away. The expenditure side, you see our salaries this year still about the same as the salaries a year ago. Benefits are up a bit because of health insurance from last year. The purchase service is also up a little bit because of the additional costs at the state level for some of our deductions, as well as a lot of the AEP rate increase that we're still facing. And so again, you see the magnitude there of the different items that are in the budget. We are winding down the fiscal year. We're getting ready to get closed. Have sort of started, I've started part of the closing process. We'll probably start the rest of it in the middle of the week. We get our final round of bills paid for the year, and we'll start the closing process. I'm hopeful we will get the month closed prior to the 4th of July holiday, and the year closed shortly thereafter, shortly after the holiday, so that we are up and ready to go for next fiscal year. I'm hoping by no later than about the 10th of July, which would actually put us ahead of last year, which we should be able to do, because we aren't transitioning this year like we were last year.
I like those graphs on the last page, Mike. I like the 3-year history there. I think that's useful to be able to compare. So, quick question for you on the May. I noticed you're right, there's some savings in purchase services and personnel services. Is that more of a timing issue than a trend?
No, the personnel we've been running on the personnel services. We've been running pretty much like that every month. Primarily, what you're really seeing 3 things in there. You're seeing the effect of Mr. Dilbon's resignation and that position being on contract right now. From Penny Miller resigning, and that position is now back in EMS. So that's on contract as well. And then the effect of the 2 teachers who have been gone probably a lot of the year. Cassandra Church at the high school, who's had a full-time sub that's a lower cost, and Stephanie Flair, who's had the long-term sub at the intervention, and those are at lower cost than they would have been, and that's where that's where most of this is coming from, is from those 4 positions.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Take roll, please.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Mr. Miller. Dr. Rantello.
Aye.
Dr. Foreman.
Aye.
11.02 is the temporary appropriation for fiscal year 2015 to allow us to begin operations July 1st.
Second.
You were slow.
I just want to make sure it mattered to
Everyone
him.
should have gotten a copy of the initial appropriation. The appropriation is actually very similar to what our appropriation is this year. Part of that is that the bond retirement appropriation this year was inflated because of the refunding that we did, so that extra $1.3 million came through our coffers this year from the refunding. You see the initial appropriation on the general fund is about $1.5 million higher than the appropriation this year. Everything else is pretty much in line. I will call your attention to our federal allocations. We just got those the other day. Our IDEA, which is for handicapped students, federal handicapped aid, is slightly lower than last year, I think about $8,000 or $9,000. The big drop there in the appropriation is because of, I have more of the money advanced this year than we had last year into June from the state, so there's not as much carryover. The base allocation went from, I think, $389,000 to $380,000. Our Title IIA, which is primarily for PD, is what we use it for. That went down by about $1,000, from like 33 to 32 or 34 to 33. Our Title I, disadvantaged children aid, actually went up by about $17,000, and that is because we do have more kids identified as economically disadvantaged this year than we had last year. And so we are getting additional aid, and we see that through our free and reduced program as well. So we just received those allocations just last week. This is just to set an appropriation level so that we can continue to pay our bills after the first of the year. By law, we'll be back probably on October with the permanent appropriation for the fiscal year.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, Bill?
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Denise?
Aye.
Dr. Runtel?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. 11.03 is a transfer of funds.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there are two sets of transfers that are going on here. That we have talked about this in the past, about taking a chunk of the money that we got from excess property tax delinquency monies and using those for one-time payments. There's an amount that is higher than we had talked about earlier, of not to exceed $80,000 to be transferred to the food service program. This is a result of, as I went back and looked at the last 5 years under the, since AVI became our partner, the amounts that we charge for lunch and for food is adequate to cover the cost of AVI meals. That has not been an issue. But also out of the food service funds come certain things that we're required to provide under the contract with AVI, which includes supplies, equipment maintenance, as well as pay-for-it fees from our parents being able to use pay-for-it. It works kind of like a credit card. You have your credit card, a company takes credit cards and pays the convenience fee to the credit card companies. What I have found is I've gone back and looked over the 5 years. Essentially the accumulated cost of the things that have not been covered by the lunch prices has been about $78,000 over 5 years, which are the pay-for-it fees, the supplies and maintenance, and then the annual inspections and things like that. The practice has been in the district is when we have gotten to the end of the year, we would get the bills from AVI for May and for June, and there would not be enough revenue to cover them because we had diverted some of the revenue from the lunch program to pay for the fees and things like that. And what I am proposing that we do is to bring us up to date on that and begin so that we are recognizing expenditures in the year we are incurring them and not relying on AVI's goodwill to wait 3 or 4 months for us to pay them their bills. And actually by doing this, we paid the April bill today, and if you approve this, we will transfer the funds tomorrow and pay the May bill tomorrow or Wednesday. And we just got the May bill from them today. And so we will be up to date so that when we start next school year, we're gonna be starting it with a clean slate. And then recognizing that there, at least in the short run, that we will have a subsidy from the operating budget needed every year to cover the pay for it and other expenses that the contract outlines, and to stop the practice of holding bills for 3 months till we start taking in revenue. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it are the projects that we talked about in the 5-year forecast, that we're using one-time money for the new replacement AEDs, the fiber line between the elementary school and the high school, the dormer project that you guys have approved tonight, security cameras for the intermediate, middle, and high school, and for, if necessary, the construction of the walls up in the offices, up on the second floor of this building. And that's the $154,308. Will cover the cost of each of those projects.
Okay.
Questions?
No, I think it's consistent with best practices, certainly for us to clear our accounts payable in the year they're incurred and not carry them over. So I applaud you for making that switch. And, certainly fundamentally we should pay our bills when they're due. And that's appropriate as well. I thank AVI for their cooperation in the past, but we should pay them. I do think at some point we probably need to examine overall, just the cost of the program, and take a look at that. Make sure that, that we're providing the optimal level of services at the right price. And by that, I don't mean the food service program, I mean the ancillary costs around it.
Yeah, I will say, just to, again, emphasize, over the 5-year period, we did take in more money in revenue than we paid to AVI aggregate over the 5 years. So that, I just want to emphasize, the problem is not here with
Right.
the food service contract in AVI, it's the other costs that we are not capturing through the food pricing structure.
The administrative type of cost.
The
Yeah.
administrative.
Also, Pittsburgh has been great from a parent perspective to be able to go through that channel and so on and so forth. What's the overall kind of cost or rate that they charge, or is that?
It's 3.9%. It's very similar, I'm pretty sure that, like, if you're a private business that takes credit cards, I think it's a 4%
Mhm.
convenience fee that you pay to the credit card company, so it's very similar.
As a parent, I like that service.
Yeah.
That's terrific service, yeah.
Right, and if we get people to pay the bills more regularly, and it's easier and more convenient and so forth.
Less paper checks to be
Mhm.
dealt with, and I think it's
Yeah.
worth,
Mhm.
worth the expense.
I think it's well worth it for convenience and for participation levels that we have, and reducing other administrative costs, as you said.
Right.
You know, if we were taking checks and other payments.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, take a roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Denise?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye. This time, I'd like to entertain a motion to enter into executive session to consider the employment of a public employee or official.
So moved.
Second?
Take the roll, please.
Mr. Denise?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Cornman? And we will have one
Action item.
action item following the first of our two
Executive.
executive sessions, but it should not be a long executive session.
So leave quickly now.
Run, right?
Contract.
Yeah, no, I'll recommend the contract.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to have a motion to approve the contract, the new contract for Mike Sobel, treasurer, for the next 5 years, from August 1st, 2014 to July 31st, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Beat me to it.
Thanks for willing to continue to work with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity to let me.
This is rolling your last year of the contract in.
Correct.
And then extending it for another 4 years.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, to say what I've said many times, though, it's great to have you on board, right? Just your insights on everything from the state level, funding to our, local issues that happen every day. You've got the rigor and the integrity that reflects well on us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What he said.
Couldn't agree more.
Take it all, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye. Now I'd like to have a motion to enter into executive session to consider the employment of a public employee or official.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye. And there will be no action after this executive session.
Stick around, won't you?
So you